This week's constellations are Cassiopeia and Cepheus. Both of these are circumpolar constellations for observers at our latitude, which means that we can see them throughout the year. We see them at different orientations depending on what time of the year we're observing them, and I've tried to provide a variety of orientations in the pictures that you'll see here. This picture shows both of the constellations in a typical view of them. Here the asterism that we associate with Cassiopeia appears. Most people see this and think of the letter W, although 6 months from this picture at the same time of night you would see an M, but most people think of a W. For Cepheus, the simplest asterism for it looks like a child's drawing of a house. We'll look at a different orientation for these things now. But here's Cassiopeia, and nearby is the constellation of Andromeda. There's the asterism that I draw for Andromeda. It looks like a V or a cornucopia. That's not one of this week's constellations, but I wanted to show you what part of the sky we're in here. Here's the location of the Andromeda galaxy, which, if the sky is dark enough, is actually a naked eye object. I usually use the asterism for Andromeda to find this. It's particularly easy off of that. Here's another view of this part of the sky. We'll see some other neighboring constellations in this one. There's Cassiopeia again. Above it in this picture is Cepheus, but only part of it in this view. Below Cassiopeia, down here and to the left, is Perseus. Perseus is a constellation that's not completely circumpolar. About the top half of it here is always above our horizon, but the bottom half is sometimes below the horizon depending on the time of year. But this is a good fall and winter constellation. And then we can still see part of the Andromeda asterism right there. And again, the Andromeda galaxy is also in this part of the sky. We'll see yet another orientation of these things. There's Cassiopeia over there, Cepheus there, and Ursa Minor over there, the Little Dipper. The North Celestial Pole is very near Polaris, which is the end of the handle of the Little Dipper here, but in a few thousand years the North Celestial Pole will be in the middle of Cepheus. Now we'll head back to our first orientation for these constellations. Can you spot them? Cepheus up there. Can you spot Cassiopeia? It's down there. We'll take a look now at a couple of interesting stars in Cepheus. Down near that corner of Cepheus is one of the regions we want to concentrate on here. That group of 3 stars that you can see inside the circle there. Delta Cephei here is the one we're interested in. It was one of the first variable stars studied, and it varies in magnitude from about 3.5 up to a magnitude of about 4.4. Over a period of 5.4 days it goes through a complete cycle, and it just repeats that, and has been for well over 100 years now that people have been observing this. The 2 neighboring stars in the circle have magnitudes close to the wide points of the range of magnitudes that Delta Cephei undergoes. One has a magnitude of 3.52 and the other has a magnitude of 4.17. And Delta Cephei, here's a more critical range of magnitudes, 3.48 to 4.37. Again, the magnitude scales run backwards, so 3.48 is when the star appears brightest, and 4.37 is when it appears dim. It turns out that the circle that I have drawn on here is just about a binocular field of view. If you study that area for a few weeks and make estimates of the magnitude of Delta Cephei compared to the other two stars, before long you can come up with a light curve for Delta Cephei where you'll see its brightness varying, and you can do a pretty good job just with the naked eye of getting pretty close to, at least to within 1/10 of a magnitude, getting pretty close to what its actual value is at that time. Cepheid variable stars and their periods of variation played an important role in 20th century astronomy. Edwin Hubble used those to determine the distance to the Andromeda galaxy. Stay tuned for more information on that later in the quarter. We'll bring Cepheus back in here. We wanted to look at another interesting star in here, which is down here at the bottom of the house, or maybe under the bottom of the house, something like that. This is Mu Cephei. Mu happens to be a Greek letter that you can see in parentheses there. Mu Cephei is known as Herschel's Garnet Star. William Herschel was an astronomer born in Germany, but he did his astronomical work in England, and in his description of this star he referred to it as being colored like a garnet, and so the name has stuck. Herschel is the astronomer best known for discovering the planet Uranus. He was also a musical composer and did quite a bit of that too. This Garnet Star is a red supergiant. It has a diameter somewhere between the size of Jupiter and Saturn's orbital diameters. And this would be a single star larger than Jupiter's orbit. So it's a pretty remarkable star. We'll take one more look at this part of the sky from yet another angle. You can see Cassiopeia over here. Can you spot Cepheus? Right there. And then Ursa Minor over there. Over in Cassiopeia, there's a cluster of stars that you can see in a telescope. Actually, they show up in binoculars too. This is Messier Object 103, M103. And here's a picture of it. You can see this cluster with binoculars. It's called an open cluster, and it's about 8,000 to 9,000 light years away from us. And that's it for this week's constellations.